So where are we? If you haven't, yeah, thanks, Daniello. In the chat there, Danielle is suggesting a tip for us. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to try and frame what's happening for you, and I hope by the end of this, your mind is buzzing with possibility. If not, I need to improve this part of the presentation. So we're at the cusp of a new era. You may have seen this if you watch the other recordings, by the way. If you imagine sort of the web as having evolved over the last, I don't know what, 70 years, and sort of these arcs that move from the mid 1900s into this decade. Here's what we're looking at. 1940s and 50s, machines were the size of a house, then a bus, then a desk. Now you have a computer on your wrist or in your phone that maybe you got for free with a phone contract that's always connected to the internet, high speed, bandwidth. Okay, so these connected machines, you can read them. We used to be able to read, from say ARPANET or some local, internal university network or something like that. Bulletin board systems in the 80s, the kind of Netscaped web in the 90s and AOL. Today, you ask Siri for the weather, and Siri, a robot, will read the internet for you and tell you what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. So that's the readable web. The writable web, again with ARPANET, bulletin board systems in the 80s, maybe basic websites with blinking, GeoCities under construction, if you remember that, all the way today, you can shoot a live, Twitch stream or YouTube stream from your mobile phone and know that will get out to your audience with a few hundred milliseconds of latency worldwide. Right? That's kind of the reality of the writable web today. The trusted web, we could say, started in 1976 with Diffie-Hellman's paper on public key cryptography, crediting Ralph Merkle with this sort of scheme for how do you exchange secrets in public. Within a few years, Chom was writing papers about identity and security and secrecy, invented something I think called e-money about 10 years later in the late 80s, early 90s. The cypherpunk movement swelling up around some of these ideals in the late 80s, early 90s. Nick Szabo coining smart contracts, inventing Hashcash somewhere in the mid 90s. Wei Dai inventing B-money, conversations in the cypherpunk mailing list around that. And then 2008-9, whenever Satoshi Nakamoto published the Bitcoin white paper that brought a bunch of these ideas together in one or two novel ways. Today, this has created for us this kind of soil, this topsoil of truth, in which it is more expensive to lie than it is to tell the truth. And into this soil, we can plant things we care about, like identity, money, ownership, provenance. And this topsoil is sitting on top of this bedrock of the other, always connected high broadband machines that we know with TCP/IP will guarantee the delivery of data from some remote server, and with our fast uplink, we'll take our data back out to those systems. And so in this way, we have this sort of new layer of truth on top of this infrastructure. And so into this layer, we can start having conversations about decentralized autonomous organizations. You may have heard of DAOs, basically, organizations of human beings that are run by software, governed by software. We can talk about token economics and mechanism design. There's an example of, for example, Kickback Events. If you haven't heard of it, you can sign up for an event, pay your deposit for the event. If you show up, they take your money, no problem. But if you don't show up, actually, you forfeit your deposit. And the people that arrived at the event get a portion of what you paid. So showing up pays you, in fact. You might attend the event for free. That requires no lawyers, no banks, no contracts, nothing except a smart contract that collects fees for the event, and then something like a proof of presence or whatever, a QR code or some scheme to be able to check that you physically arrived at the event and pay you out from the proceeds of people who didn't show up to the event. That's called Kickback Events. You can look it up now. And there's several of these kinds of things. In fact, the graph an indexing service has a pretty interesting system set up with mechanism design for people who are indexing blockchain systems, curating which systems they should be indexing, delegating capital to the indexers so that they can maintain high quality indices of these sources of data. So you can read about the graph and their mechanism design. They have a couple of nice articles on Medium where they explain some of these details. But in the end, no banks, no lawyers, no contracts, legal contracts, no government policing any of this stuff. It's simply code that manages these relationships. That's kind of the aha moment. All right, and then this idea, sort of waving our hands now, total disintermediation. We can have all sorts of wonderful APIs. There's a nice token economics course that's linked in these slides. I'm happy to share that with you.